Have you ever stopped to think about the fans behind a band? What is it about the music that keeps fans coming back for more? Or is there more? My name is Renae Lipsmeyer, and I am the host of this podcast, The Space Between Podcast, the podcast where we talk about the fans of the Dave Matthews Band. Each week, a fellow DMB fan joins the show to discuss their journey with the band. Welcome to the Space Between Podcast. Thank you for watching a special two-part episode of the Space Between Podcast. Part 2 will release later this week, so be sure to look on all the socials for a heads up. Peace, love, and Dave Matthews Band. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Space Between Podcast, the podcast where we talk about the fans of a band that was just recently inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If you're watching this on YouTube, I think you're going to know, but if this is your very first time listening to this podcast, welcome. Number one, there is over 160 episodes that you can listen to, and every single one of those episodes is, well, almost every single one of those episodes is a different person telling their journey with the Dave Matthews Band. So if you did not know, they did just get inducted. And so the guest I have today, I think he's got some stories about being there. We'll get to that later. I love talking about the induction ceremony. It was mind-blowing and history-making and a once-in-a-lifetime event for not only them, but us as the fans. It was crazy. But, this episode is like all the rest of them. I have a guest on today that is here to share his story, his journey with the Dave Matthews Band. So tell us who you are, where you are, and tell us a little bit about you.
I am Brad, longtime Dave fan from St. Louis, Missouri originally. And the last 9.5, almost 10 years of my life, I've been down in the South Florida area with West Palm Beach as my, home amphitheater, I guess you could call it. So if you've been around any of the Florida area or St. Louis area, you might recognize my face.
St. Louis is my most recent favorite live tracks. I don't know what the number is. I can't remember. Stadium? Yes. There, it was actually shared with me. Yes, the Busch Stadium. It was shared with me, and I was like, "Fucking St. Louis, damn!" And I wish they would play there again now.
It was a very good show, good set list. When that came out, we were very happy that we had a St. Louis live release. It was like, oh my god!
I love St. Louis. It's close to me. I know it's not close to you anymore, but would you go to a show if they did a show in St. Louis?
No, I'm in there now, actually. I just moved back a few months ago, hanging out here with some family and trying to take a new adventure of my business more in the Midwest, because down in South Florida, what I do for a living and a lot of what I do is some trade shows. And to travel outside of Florida would take me 8+ hours to leave the state to just get to another state. And, at least now in the Midwest, I can go to Chicago, I can go to Kansas City, I can go to Indianapolis, I can go to... Which that's a big part of my Dave story too, and how I got into Dave growing up in St. Louis. I road tripped, baby. That's what I did, and that's I know a lot of you guys who are going to be listening to this are road trippers and share a big story with me. So it's a big part of how I got into them.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about you before we dive into Dave. Tell us a little bit about your life. I know you said you've got a business. I know you have a pet. You have to talk about him because he's a big part of your life. Tell us who's in the room with us. No one can see him, but he's locked up. Yeah, he's not in jail, but he's locked up.
I got a little dachshund, and he thinks he's his cousin, the Doberman Pinscher, and he's not. But he's a little 11.5, 12 pound nugget. And he is a bundle of love, just cuddles and blankets all day long, but he is the most defensive, protective, hunting instinctive dog in the world, and he is vicious. He's vicious. But we love him. Oh, he's whining now, like a little sweet little pup.
Little
Let me
dog
out of my
syndrome.
jail.
No, absolutely.
To typical.
Well, yes. He knows you're doing a podcast and he's like, this, let me have my five
He wants
minutes
to
of
be a
fame,
part of
Dad.
it.
Come on. Let me have
That's him.
it.
That's him. He wants
Well,
to be
you're
a
on a
part of
podcast now.
everything.
Yeah, he does. He said, give me my 5 minutes. But he did. He officially made the episode. So we're talking about him. You are coming in clear. I cannot see you, but
Okay.
you are coming in clear. I think they should definitely do St. Louis again. I'd love to see them in Kansas City. I think that Kansas City is a really fun town. I mean, obviously, it's a hot city right now with with so many other things, sports. So it would be a great place to have our favorite band come to as well. So I'm not too far away
Absolutely.
from you, about 5 hours south, I think, from St. Louis. And so it's fun to be that close. St.
Okay.
Louis is a really cool town.
Yeah, it can be. There's a lot of fun things to do here. Raise a family here. You know what I mean? When it
Yeah.
comes to just year-long experience, that's kind of why I got out of St. Louis. I was looking for a little more, and I
Yeah.
went down to South Florida, and it served a good part of my life, and I hope to eventually find my way back down there. But right now, I have business to take care of, and business
Yeah.
first.
Taking care of business.
That's it.
So tell
And
me and tell
I got
everyone that's
family
listening.
here. They're not so bad.
Well, that's very important. That's very important. Family is a great thing to have. So take us back. When was the very first time you ever heard of this band we're going to talk about, the Dave Matthews Band?
Well, heard of them back in the 90s growing up. I mean, the radio songs and, just the popularity of the band. I had heard their music, heard their songs. I knew Dave's voice. That was it.
Yeah.
Wasn't a fan, but I wasn't not a fan. It was tolerable music. And it was, that was all. It was pop tolerable music to me as a child that I grew up with. Um, then I guess my first show was kind of when things changed. And the first show that I went to, I had a friend that was a big Dave fan, and he had an extra ticket, and it was 2003. I was still in high school. And he's like, why don't you come to Dave Matthews Band? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I want to go to Dave Matthews Band. You know what I mean?
It's a waste of my time.
And he's like, trust, dude, you'll love it. It's a great time, blah, 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 blah. Robert Randolph's opening. I said, Robert who? You know what I mean? It wasn't
Yes,
familiar to
exactly.
me.
Yeah.
No idea. And he's like, dude, just go, blah, 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 blah. Fine, whatever. And I loved concerts. I loved music. It was a huge part
Yeah.
of my life. At that time, like at that age, I was probably listening to more rap than anything.
Hell
Like,
yeah.
that was like when Nelly was like
Yes.
breaking out. Like I
Yes.
was in high school. I graduated high school in '04. You know what I mean? It's
Mm-hmm.
like that's what
Mm-hmm.
I listened to growing up in St. Louis. Like it was Eminem and Nelly, and like that was
Yes.
the hottest thing out
Yes.
there. So
Yes.
going to a Dave Matthews concert at that time on a Thursday night or whatever, who knows? In St. Louis, it's usually not
Yeah.
weekends. I was like, whatever. You know what I mean?
It's a
So like I
shift.
went. So I went. You know what I mean? And I was familiar
Yeah.
with Dave, and I was familiar with the band. And probably that night, if I went back and looked at the set list on like DMB Almanac or whatever, I'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe I got that or whatever, you know what I mean? But
Right.
at that time, like I probably didn't know more than, 4 or 5 songs that he played that night. I'm guessing. I don't even
Yeah.
remember a whole lot of memories from that show.
Yeah. It was a
Obviously
long
it's,
time ago.
been a little bit, and we'll discuss later as I have some other
Yes.
things going on in here that might confuse that. But, there was a Rams NFL football player that was sitting right next to us, and I'll remember it for the rest of my life because that was the first like public beer I ever had, and I was so underage. The Rams player offered to buy it for. He's like, "You guys, I know you guys aren't old enough. You want me to go get you a beer or whatever?"
Yeah, we
And
do.
these were the old days. You know what I mean? Nowadays, you probably
Exactly.
wouldn't have an NFL player buy a beer for a
Nope.
teenager.
Nope. He would be all
But
over the
back in
internet.
But 21 years ago, I guess it was a thing, and it was like nothing.
It was
It was just
before
awesome.
social media. Wait, 2003. It's like, well, I don't think there was social. Hell, I can't even remember 2003.
And I couldn't even name that player if I wanted to because he was some lineman nobody. You know what I mean? It's not
Yeah,
like it
yeah,
was, the star player or nothing, but it
right.
was just one of those I'll remember for the rest of my life. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
Because it was
yeah.
like he asked if we wanted a beer, and I kind of looked at my buddy, and I kind of looked at him, and I was kind of like I didn't really want a beer. I didn't, I was too like I wasn't a drinker. It wasn't my thing then.
Right.
But he's like, "You want a beer?" And I was like, at this guy, I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll take it. Yeah, yeah, I'll
Sure.
take a Bud Light. Yeah, sure, yeah."
Absolutely.
And like, I remember drinking it, like, all right, whatever.
It's made for
But
a cool
yeah,
story. It's a cool story.
that's all it was. That's all it was. It was a cool story. But that show, I remember, and it had nothing to do with the beer because the beer came later in the night. But the
Yeah.
whole show, I was at the edge of my seat, just like,
What was it about it?
just, I don't know. I grew up in concerts. Like as a child, I saw bands like the Eagles before they ever had any of their split ups or deaths or anything. Okay, and
Yeah.
like I grew up going to concerts with my dad. I mean, I saw Kiss and
Oh, wow.
saw, and I'm talking as a teen, like, 12, 13 years old, going to see bands. I mean, Three Dog Night.
Oh.
And, I mean,
You
I
were
could
cool
go
and you didn't
so
know you were
crazy
cool.
deep. I mean, like I remember the Wallflowers. Okay. Remember the
Hell yeah.
Wallflowers
Oh,
came out?
hell yeah.
So the Wallflowers and the Counting Crows, like both
Mm,
came out like same year. And it was like they both had hit albums. It was whatever the big, I suck with names, but
me
the
too.
Famous Counting Crows album. I mean, like
Yeah,
the
it's like a
first three,
yellow
four of
orange
that
one.
album.
Yeah, like
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
yes,
I
yes.
have the signed copy. I have the signed copy.
Oh
Okay.
shit.
So yeah, I'm a collector of memorabilias and stuff. So
That's
that's
awesome.
my thing.
Yeah.
So it's also what I kind of do for a living, just on the sports side, not the music side. Music's more
Awesome.
PC, personal collection. So
Yeah.
um, it's it's one of those things that, I saw all those bands like with my dad. Like I was like 12, 13 when the Counting Crows and the Wallflowers broke out. And my dad was all like, "This is Bob Dylan's son." You know what I mean? And he was all
Right.
hyped up about, back in
Yeah.
it, like, "This is freaking Bob Dylan's son." And I'm 12, 13. I'm like, "Yeah, listen when my dad listens to it." You know what I mean? Sure, I'll look at the
Yes.
concert. Like, yeah. Saw Alanis Morissette with him when I was like 10 years old, 1996.
Holy shit. That's
Yeah.
amazing because she was
And
I mean she's still good, but she was like
oh, so tied
she
to
was
Dave
good
though.
right then. Well, and true. And
And the
I mean I
ties
didn't
to
know that
Dave.
then.
So it's so crazy. So I was 10 years old when I went to that show, right? And I
Uh-huh.
still have that ticket stub. And that ticket stub, okay, I keep all my stuff, okay?
Uh-huh.
That ticket stub, it says Alanis Morissette, blah, blah, blah. And on the bottom, it lists like 4 upcoming concerts.
Uh-huh.
Who's on that concerts of upcoming?
I don't know.
Dave. Dave.
Ah, gotcha. That's
And
crazy.
I think it says Horde Fest featuring Blues Traveler and Dave Matthews or something like that. I
Okay.
think that was that maybe. I think it was like
Gotcha.
1996. I'm guessing like
Yeah.
when Jagged Little Pill came out. And that was, I was always music buffed. But
Mm-hmm.
it's funny how I got so deep into Dave and big into Dave, but yet when I was 10 years old, I begged my dad to go to Alanis Morissette with me. You know what I mean? Like how
Yeah.
those ties actually happen that after
Yeah.
later in life, 10, 15 years later, and I'm hearing Spoon and I hear her, you know what I mean? Or what, and I'm like, Alanis
Right.
Morissette? And I was already
Right.
so like how those things, you know what I mean? They obviously had their little time together, but it's wild how, life happens. The
I
world,
love that. Yeah.
the world just
It,
turns.
it does. And it
And that's my
intermingles.
life. Yeah, my life has
Yeah.
a lot of those weird, weird, weird things.
Well, tell me, give me some examples. What's been weird in your life?
I grew up that kid who just always felt different.
Yeah.
And I didn't know why. I was always undersized, so I was
Uh-huh.
always very athletic and fierce competitor. I always wanted to, play with the kids that were twice as tall as me in basketball. I always wanted to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was kind of a pain in the ass as a child. I really was. I was a pain in the ass to my parents, a pain in the ass to my teachers.
Do they say that
Um,
about you?
Oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah. They say I'm, that I'm the most loving thing in the world, but I am, My mom always says, "Don't bullshit the bullshitter," you know
Oh,
what I mean,
yes,
kind of
I
thing.
do.
And then people are like, "Oh, you're an asshole." I'm like, "I'm not an asshole. I'm the asshole." You
Oh,
know, it's
yeah.
like there's
If you're
a
going to be one, be the one.
claim it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the people who know me, who really know me, who I let in my circle, which I think I'm just a very defensive person, and I keep that very safe to me,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
close
And that's
circle.
okay.
But
Yeah. It's good. It's a
other
good
other
thing.
people other people tell you I'm the most giving, too giving person. He's all bark, no bite. I've heard that 100 times. It's a weird life, and I have many reasons for why I'm the way I am, and I just don't always share those reasons, and a lot of people don't get to hear it, and I figured this would be a good time for maybe me to share a little bit of that, you
Yeah,
know?
no, I'm excited. I'm excited to hear. It's your life story. It's your journey, and it
Yeah,
is all of the things that have happened in our lives, most of which we have zero control over. It just happens.
yeah,
Um, make us exactly who we are today. And if you were to erase
absolutely.
even the smallest part of anything, good or bad, it would not result in the same thing as you are now. So I'm excited to hear what
Sure,
makes you you and what makes you what you say everyone describes you as, because all of these things are what made you these things.
sure,
So
sure.
where do we
Like I
start?
said,
Where do
like
we
the
start
child,
with
like I
that?
said, growing up, that kind of like that's who I was, or that's whatever it was. And as I got older, I got to realize why some of that stuff maybe happened, or why I am
Mhm.
the way I am. And
Yeah.
and I guess in my opinion, at this time, at 38 years old, it's the beautiful part of life that I see. You know what I mean? Is the way
Yeah.
that we can actually look back at things and be like, so that's the way that's the reason why I'm this way. Or that's the
Yeah.
reason I act, or that's the reason I do, to really look at things from the outside looking in and understand the psychology of yourself.
Yes.
You'll never understand it. And that's why
No.
it's like I constantly research myself. You know what I mean? I
Uh-huh.
don't know how else to look at, but Dave is like that control. He's that one thing that's just always kind of stuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. A
So
constant.
I use Dave Matthews as a way to hang on for another day, after crazy life that I've had and near death experiences and crazy medical diagnosis. I have that date of that Dave Matthews show to go to to look forward to,
Yes.
or I have, oh my God, I have tickets to the Hall of Fame induction.
Yes.
It's something to look for. And like, I worry about that. And I say to my dad all the time, when you look at music today, what bands in today's music will be performing like the Rolling Stones and AC/DC until they're 80, 85 and dying? What bands in today's genres and musics have the chance or possibility of lasting that long? Go ahead and name me another one besides the Dave Matthews Band, and I'll wait.
Right. You're right.
And I try so often to think about, what I mean, where are concerts going? Where's live music going? What I grew up seeing some of these bands, 60s, 70s rock and roll musicians, legends. I've seen a lot, and it's one of those things that I look and I'm like, I love live music. I love concerts.
Hmm.
But, Taylor Swift's great. She's entertaining. Love it. Sure.
She's a performer.
I'm not paying to go see that girl
I
live.
can't
You
afford
know what
that.
I mean?
Shit's
Not even
expensive.
that. Just I'll turn on the music video. The
If she
music
would
video,
take
it's
me, I
like,
got a front row seat, and it's the same every time, except for the secret song. I understand that.
I get that. But, like I say, it's like, so I grew up at 12, 13 years old. I played the trumpet, you know what I mean? And I played the trumpet in band for multiple years. I was pretty good, but
Yeah.
I was one of those kids. I got bored. I got bored with everything I did.
Uh huh.
So no matter what, I like school, I could never get into school because I got so bored. And I always asked a lot of questions. I was always one of those people that could read lies or tell when someone wasn't giving you the whole story. So I always asked too many questions. I was told we can't ask those questions, or don't ask questions, or sit
What is
down,
it?
shut up,
Did you ask those questions because you were generally interested in knowing more about that, or do you
I
think you were
think
asking questions
so.
to ask questions?
in today's world of people with, whether it's autism or on the spectrum and this
Uh-huh.
and that, I grew up in a day where that wasn't, necessarily diagnosed or pointed out or anything.
Right,
I
right.
remember as a young child, I remember one of the first things that like I really rebelled against, that I was kind of selected or what, they had pulled me out for those gifted programs in school or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, you've been chosen because you have
Yes.
this and this and this. And I remember this, and this is elementary school. So we got to say like 10 years oldish. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do I want to do more work than my friends?
True. I don't know why.
I looked at it as an add-on or extra, more something than what I was already doing or school. You know what I
Mm-hmm. It
mean?
is more.
So I was asking questions, and I was told, like, you know what I mean, that I was,
Yes.
ungrateful or this or that or what, and whatever else kind
Yeah.
of things. That's kind of like how I don't want to say it was like from my parents or from necessarily the teachers, but just the general gist of what I was kind of, like, you've been selected, sit down, shut up, do this, more
Right.
puzzles. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, no, no. I
Yes.
was that kid who said no. I was that
Mm-hmm.
kid who, at 15 years old, when I got suspended for something that I shouldn't have gotten suspended for, I walked right out of my school, and I walked literally an hour home. And I
You
was,
stood up for yourself? What?
13, 14 years old. And I remember the principal like following me to the door, like, Brad, stop, Brad, you can't, Brad, stop. But I knew as a like 12, 13-year old that he couldn't put his hands on me. I
Mm-hmm.
was, smart. It's not like my parents raised me on that, but it was
Right,
just
right.
knowing better. And I was rebellious like that. I wasn't a bad kid, but
Right.
I questioned a lot. I was always a
Mm-hmm.
questioner. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, I don't know, like part of me, like when it comes to Dave's lyrics, I'm a lyric guy.
Yeah.
And when you go to the older songs, so many songs are written where you got to read between the lines a little bit. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just not so cut and dry lyrics like how I would describe some of his newer materials that he writes now. It's a little different, and the evolution of Dave is understandable. The man had some stories too,
Boy,
and that a
did
lot
he.
of you guys maybe don't know. But
Mm-hmm.
people with stories and trauma, and they want to share those stories, and Dave shared his stories through his songs and through his performances, and that's what I look at and where I feel like I connect. I strive to be like Dave, and that's what I've always said the whole time I followed the band. Of when I really kind of grew to them. That first concert, I was just in awe. Oh, I
Yeah.
lost my earplug, but that was the awe, and that's what drove me in, was the first live performance. And then from then on out, I guess it just never stopped. Once I saw them that first time, I've never stopped seeing them.
Yeah.
So it was so, that's, I mean, no other band ever has done that to me. And I've seen hundreds of bands. I saw Tom
Right.
Petty like 6 times. I really
Wow.
love Tom Petty, and if he came to town or whatever, but I didn't travel to go see Tom Petty. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I didn't, it was different,
Yeah. Yeah.
but that was one of the artists out there that I don't care how many times I saw him. And, when you say how, all bands, perform the same song. Dave changes it up every time he plays it. You may hear
Right.
two step 25 times, but every time you hear it, gonna be
It's
a little
different.
flavor.
It's be
There's
a
a
little
little
bit different.
something in there. What's he doing? So, um, Tom Petty had a little of that too here and there, and not quite like Dave, but
Yeah.
I like to think that Dave takes pieces out of guys like Tom Petty.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he covers Tom Petty, and he does it beautifully. Um, I love that about Dave. That's like, because of my big music history and going to all these concerts and all this, the people that he covers, that's what I grew up listening to. When he covers Paul Simon, when he covers the Talking Heads, when he covers Tom Petty, I sit here, and my father, his birthday's in a couple days here. I don't know, he's going to be 67, something like that, 60. I don't
Happy
know.
birthday, Dad.
Okay, Dad. Okay, he's now been to at least a dozen Dave shows with me,
Wow. So he likes Dave too.
and it's grown on him. But the covers blow his mind,
Oh, I
because, like
bet.
he always says, no matter who sings the cover, Dave has a way where it's still Dave. And like my
Yeah.
dad says, he does his Dave things. Okay. But he somehow finds a way to replicate that artist
Mm-hmm.
or in the style of, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And even at the Hall of Fame, we got to see that beautiful solo. And it's just like, when he does these things, I sit there and I'm just like, this man is beyond talented. It's
Yeah.
something else. And it's
It
in that
is.
head. And I think that's when you hear him speak his interviews, I like to think that a lot of that awkward weirdness or whatever, like, I share that. It may not be
Mm-hmm.
Dave because it's no
Right.
one's like anyone else,
Exactly.
but I get it, and
Yeah.
I say a
Yeah.
lot of wacky things off the fly of my whatever, but it's a part of the thing that I've just styled, and I strive to be a better man, like I
Yeah.
say Dave is, because I look at Dave as just a better man, and God forbid any dirt that comes out on him 10, 20, 30 years from now, because I have his name tattooed on my back.
Wow. So when
I
did you start digging into the lyrics? Because you go to your first show, you're aware of some songs, but like how do you and when do you start digging into holy
100.
fuck, here's what he was
Yeah,
saying, and like you're getting the message.
yeah, that's what it was for me. So when I saw the first show in '03, it was a friend of mine had an extra ticket. His name was Dan. And outside of that, good guy, acquaintance, friend, whatever, cool guy.
Yeah.
He wasn't the big Dave fan. The big Dave fan was sitting like front or second row with his cousin who was an original Week Warehouse member. You know what
Oh
I mean?
shit. Yeah.
Like a 95, okay, 96, whatever it was, or something
Yeah.
stupid,
Yeah.
whatever, I don't know. But he used to always brag about it. And back then, like, they did a lot better for seniority and stuff. So he used to always get just stellar tickets.
The warehouse opened in
And
1998. That just came to me.
98. Okay, there it is. So yeah, he
1998.
was he was he was an original Week Warehouse member. I remember all of that. And it was my buddy's older cousin. So my buddy was in high school with me at that time, and his cousin was in college at that time, and this is back in '03 or whatever. And um, he was probably older than that then. I don't even remember, but that's not important.
Yeah.
What is important is that guy who was up there at that front, whatever. We were friends, but I guess as I showed interest to Dave Matthews, maybe we became closer friends.
Mm-hmm.
And, back in the early days of, high school days and smoking pot and taking car drives and just listening to music because
Yep.
that's what we did in the late 90s and early 2000s if you were a kid in the Midwest.
Yeah. I mean,
You, you take
back
you
road
take car rides,
drives. Hell yeah.
just car rides. And, we'd roll one up, we'd take our car rides, roll three up, take our car rides. And he was Dave Matthews crazed at that time. At that time of his life, going into the end of high school, early college, he knew Dave's birthday, Dave's address, Dave's this, Dave's that. It was everything and anything. He actually went to Seattle on a trip, whatever, had nothing to do with Dave or whatever, but he found the house, take pictures outside of the
Mm-hmm.
freaking house thing. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
these
Yep.
these were before Google Maps and stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you had to map quest that stuff, but it was on the Dave forums and stuff, and he was in all
Right.
those forums, and the internet
He
was a
was
different
in.
place in '03. It was a different place in
It
'03.
was totally different.
It was it was kind of scary, but it was kind of awesome at the same time.
Yeah, we didn't
So
know.
yeah, hey, it is what it is. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's better or worse. It's
I
both,
mean, I don't
It's
know.
both.
Here's what I know about life. I know nothing. That is what I know.
You're here, right?
Mm, I think
You think
so.
you are? You think this is real? Is this a simulation?
I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, is this real? I mean, in the bad times and in the good, like, is this real?
Yeah. So like
I think
the
it is.
the lyric, the whole lyric thing, I guess, got deep with him because he was so knowledgeable. Shouts out to
Right.
Brandon wherever you are. Just saying, big Brandon, nice guy, one of my best buddies in high school, and it was his love for Dave Matthews that forced it down my throat, more or less. And because I was interested, he fed and he fed
Yeah.
and he fed and he fed. And it was, here's December 10th, 1998, and, two step, you got to hear this jam at the end. But he fast forwarded and he'd fucking, that. And like, I'm and
I
it
want a
was
friend
just
like
next to the
that. I mean,
next
I
to the
have some,
next to
but
the next.
that's a good friend.
These were in the day we didn't have MP3 players and stuff. Yeah, I
Right.
mean it was CDs, and it was just CD after CD after CD after CD. And if you went to his house, it was like freaking spindles and spindles and spindles of just Dave CDs. And I'll make you a copy of this. I'll make you a copy. You want me to make you a copy of that one? You want me to make you a copy of this one? And I'm like, yeah. And it
So
was
it was
just
never
like,
overwhelming to you. You like took it as it came. You were never like, okay,
well,
hold
I think
on, hold
it
on.
was that musician in me, or the wannabe musician. Like a lot of people
Hmm.
said, like, dude, you should have been something. Why aren't you something? I get that a million times in my life. And my best reason that I can always say is, I don't know, I can't play the guitar. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, I can't this. Like, I don't know, I just never did that.
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting low on my battery. I want to make sure this thing's charging, and it's acting up right now.
So do you think Brandon showing you all of those CDs and all of those versions, if you will, of the songs made you kind of want to dig into the lyrics? Or what was it that Brandon showed you or told you that made you want to dig deeper and find out what exactly is this man saying in these songs?
Sure. I guess, yeah, the first thing was once I saw them that first time live, it was, okay, these guys actually play. These guys can play.
Hell
You know what
yeah.
I mean? And it was
Hmm.
all this mix of sounds that I was hearing. It was like I get a little jazz, I get a little rock, I get a little this, I get a little that. And I mean, these were back in, 2003. We still had Butch Taylor on the keys, and we still had, Boyd on the violin, and
Yeah.
it was a different, Dave's had his evolution too. And
Oh yeah.
I'm not one of those people who say like, oh, Dave sucks since Boyd left, or Dave sucks since Butch left, or Dave's I love the ride that it's been on, and I'm okay with the evolutions it goes.
Yes.
And
And that's
and
life,
like
man.
I've said to myself, like, if Dave, is 80 and all he's doing is solo performing or whatever,
Sign me up.
let's go. We need another solo album.
Yes.
I mean,
Some Devil Part 2.
it's one of my favorite
I
albums, and
love
I'm
it.
sitting here like, please, can we get another Dave solo album? Like, yeah,
I'm down for it.
I, I really thought during COVID we would, and I thought during COVID he maybe sit down. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my god, we might get a solo. That was like when they went into when lockdowns happened and everything. I literally it was one of the things I like call in like one of my Dave friends. I was like, dude, do you think we'll get a solo album finally? And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, dude, we're gonna be freaking locked up. What's Dave gonna do for
I
they
know.
canceled tour, no touring for 20 or whatever. I was sitting there, I was like, he's got to write an album. I was
Well, you
like,
know what? He
solo
might have.
album.
He might have.
This
Don't
guy's
discard that idea.
no,
He's probably done a
no,
lot
it's
of shit that's
hundreds.
locked up for
It's
later.
all like Prince supposedly had thousands and thousands of songs or bits of songs. Didn't even finish them. You know what I mean? Just
Oh,
stashed.
I can't wait to get inside the vault. I
The
mean,
Dave stash. Yeah,
ooh,
it
I can't
could
wait.
be interesting. It could
Yeah,
be
it's gonna
interesting. I
be.
don't know if
I hope I
he
get to see it.
But he seems like the kind of guy. He wouldn't want unfinished works to get out. You know what I mean?
No, I
He's
don't
kind of.
think
I feel like
so.
he's kind of one of those like he'd be embarrassed. You know what I mean?
I think he's
Like
got a plan, and I want to see what his plan is
yeah.
because honestly, like he's not messed up. He's done really good
And
stuff, and I want to continue to see
and
what he
that's where I
does.
say like he ain't going nowhere. Like you know
No.
what I mean? I say 20, 30 years from now, like he could be that performer that's performing at 75, 80 years old on a stool still, playing his guitar
Yeah.
and singing.
I think
It wouldn't.
yeah, well, he will.
And it's huge. I hope so because without him, I don't know what I'm doing here.
I've talked about that often, like how they'll if there's ever a retirement that will need like legit support groups because so much of our lives have been poured into this and wrapped around this, and that is the carrot that we're
Yeah,
always dangling is like the next Dave
yeah,
show or the next Dave whatever. And if that comes to a halt, what do
yeah,
we do?
yeah,
What do we do?
yeah, yeah.
No one has
And
an answer for that.
I'm with you because, like I said, through a lot of my life and these troubles and stuff that I've had and little bumps in the roads, it's that one. Like I say, it's the one stable thing that I always, and it's why I got Dave's name tattooed on my back. Was I always said like Dave has my back,
Ooh, yeah.
and I'm not I have no other tattoos on my body. If you saw me anywhere, whatever, you wouldn't know I'm a tattoo guy, but I got one tattoo. And that one piece of ink on my body, it's right back here, and it's a fire dancer, and it's Dave's autograph, and that's it. So
I
it's
love
like
that.
I say, and like some of my buddies who like don't like Dave or whatever, they always give, yeah, he's got another man's name tattooed on his back. Oh. And I'm like, that's, you don't have to understand, because without
Mm-mm.
this guy, I'm nothing. And it's I don't know what it is. And many of us can't even describe that feeling that we get
Mm-hmm.
at the shows when that first chord, when he comes out and we see that smiling face, when any of these things happen. It's that feeling where, as a former drug addict, and if you'd like me to talk about that, I'm very
I
open
want
to
you
it.
to. I want you to dig in deep.
Um, it's a drug, and it's a healthy drug. It's a healthy
Mm-hmm.
addiction, and it is, I've realized throughout my years. And coincidentally, we were supposed to, I believe, talk yesterday, and
Yes, yes, we were.
today today's my actual anniversary. I was a heroin addict, and after heroin, I was on methadone for a couple of years, and that seemed to be just as addicting as the heroin. And the doctors told me to get on that, and I got on that to try to get off the heroin. I tried to get off the methadone, and they wanted me to stay on it. And I had a whole game to play with the doctors, and basically took my medicine down incrementally,
Mm-hmm.
until I was able to get off of that or
Right.
whatever. But today is actually, I guess, 9 years
Congratulations.
since that last dose of methadone.
Wow.
So
See,
nine
see,
or
it was
10,
meant
I
to be.
forget.
It was
I'm not even that guy. I'm not that guy who goes to meetings. I'm not that guy who keeps a coin. I'm not that guy. It's all here somewhere, but it's like, yeah, it's either 9 or 10 now, 2015 or 2016, whatever. 2015, I guess, is what it was when I moved to Florida. That was my move to Florida. I was an addict here in St. Louis, and after finally getting off of it, and then I was on the methadone, getting off of that, I had realized that I felt lost.
Yeah.
I felt like I let a lot of people down. I felt
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? I wouldn't be able to repair my name. I
Right.
felt like, very alienated. It's like people always say, once an addict, always an addict.
Yeah.
Maybe somewhat true. I'm an addict, that's for sure. I am once an addict, always an addict. But I'm not a heroin addict anymore. I'm a Dave
Right.
addict.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely. I'm a trading card addict. I
Yeah.
collect trading cards.
I can't wait to
Okay.
hear. I
Um,
can't wait to hear.
I, so I've found healthy addictions in my life, but I think it's important for people who have troubles, whether it's mental troubles, trauma troubles, this, that, whatever it is, find that happy place, find
Yeah.
that thing, and don't let go of it. You know what I mean? Don't let
Yeah.
anyone tell you that that can't be your thing. You know
Right.
what I mean? If your thing is like you want to dress up like a butterfly on Thursday nights and fly around your parking lot, and
Please do
fly
it.
butterfly, fly.
Please
You
do
know what I
it.
mean? I
Yes.
might take a couple pictures from my window,
But it
like, look
makes
at
me
this guy out
happy.
here. But like,
Yeah, it makes me
do
happy. You're
it.
just, yes. Yes, I agree.
Do it. And if you don't do it, then don't bitch about it later when you didn't get, to do this, or I didn't get to do that. And there's so many people
Right.
out there who are living a life of not being happy, and it bothers me. I'm not the happiest guy, but I have many reasons for not being the happiest guy. And there's a lot of people out there that I see, and they got two beautiful kids or five beautiful kids, or maybe they got no kids, and maybe they got a husband who hates them, or a wife that cheats
Yeah.
on them, or something of that nature. And they talk about their problems like it's the end of the world. And it's like, it could be worse. It could always be worse. I've
Yeah.
had my fair share of run-ins, and I've always thought it's over. Why me playing that game? Why me? Why
Mm,
me? Why me? And I feel like a lot of these Dave songs out there, a lot of the uplifting Dave songs, a lot of them were happy or peaceful. Uh, you know, I'm not the big guy who just comes out and just at the top of my head like, oh, lyrics. You know what I mean? But if I
yeah,
sat here and
yeah,
I think, it's just those songs that bring that peace and that joy to people who have trauma and trouble. You know what I mean?
yes,
That can kind of bring that peace. And that's a drug right there. That's your
yes.
antidepressant.
That's right. Makes you feel good.
That's your anti
And
that's your anti-anxiety.
Yes.
those are drugs. You know what I
That's
mean?
chemistry, baby. It's
So,
happening in your brain. It is happening. It's
and
real.
yeah, yeah. So the heroin addiction was a big part of me. And, if you go back to some of Dave's, way past and everything or whatever, I think there was, maybe some touching in there. And, that resonates in some of his songs.
Mhm.
Rhyme and Reason specifically. That song, before being an addict, was a fun song for me.
Yeah.
And that's all. It was a fun. It was a nice song to listen to. Whatever, it's fun. Then I got into heroin addiction, and I don't want to share too much of my story of how I got into that, because that's not
Mhm.
important.
No, it's
The
not.
more important story is how you get out of it.
Hell yeah. Yes, yes, yes.
That's the story that needs to be
That's the
shared. The story of how
story.
you get into it. Everyone gets into things different ways.
That's right.
I grew up with a very pretty happy household. Mom and dad are cool. I didn't have any like crazy childhood traumas like some people may go through. I Many people would say I lived a pretty privileged childhood. I'd say the only thing looking back now as an adult is my parents, I don't want to say struggled, but my parents did what they had to for their children.
Mhm.
And by that, both of my parents worked. And I
Mhm.
grew up in like kind of an affluent area where maybe not, most of my friends, their moms may not have worked, or
Right.
they might have
Yeah.
had a little part-time bullshit job. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Whatever it
Yes.
was. But like it, okay, all of my friends got cars at 16, and many of them had BMWs and
Well,
Mercedes. Okay.
shit. Shit. That's nice.
So
That
I
must
grew up kind of
nice.
like, but I got a 95 Pontiac Grand Am at 16.
Hell
And
yes.
although I didn't, it was actually a surprise. I did not think I was getting a car at 16, because that's the kind of like, we didn't have that money. We weren't that kind of family, and I knew that growing up. And it's kind of, I never really, hated it back then. I mean, I hated it. My friends got the new Oakleys and my friends got the new Air Max. I'm like, Dad, I don't want a pair of these new Air Maxes. My dad's like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
spend $150 on a pair of Air Max. You're gonna outgrow them in 30 days. And my
It's
shoe
true.
size was just flying. My shoe size was flying. And back then he's like, I'm 30 days. I'm not buying you those. I had an
Mm-mm.
uncle who was my mom's younger brother, and he was that uncle that bought me everything Dad wouldn't. And it's like, I can thank him, wherever you are. You'll never see this, Jay, but thank you. I got the Oakley sunglasses, and I got the Air Maxes, and I was able to feel a little more like the kids at school. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But, like I said, I was small. I was always undersized, so I was picked on. I was bullied. And then plus having not quite as much as maybe some of your other friends, I feel like there might have been some of that kind of took place too, that I didn't even really realize it at that young age.
Right.
But I hated going to school. I hated, what I mean, people. I hated two-faced people. I hated the backstabbing. I hated drama. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? It was like when
Mm-hmm.
I watched, like, I don't know if you watched, I'm sure you did, the 23 Reasons Why on Netflix or whatever.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch
Yeah.
that show?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
I watched that, even though that wasn't necessarily like, oh, that didn't happen to me. But like everything in that show, I was like, somehow could relate to my high school. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I saw that happen to someone. I know
Mm-hmm.
that happened to another guy,
Mm-hmm.
including suicide. It happened
Mm-hmm.
at my high school. And it's crazy how relatable that show was. Whether you're a
Yeah.
fan of it or not, I'm not saying I'm a fan. I wasn't, or what I mean. But it was one of those things, like I watched it because it was the viral thing to watch.
Yes, it
You know what I
was.
mean? And I sat there and I scratched my head and I was like, every damn thing they touched happened at my school. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Very
And
relatable.
if you're watching this and you went to high school with me and you're like, he's full of shit, you're out of your mind. You didn't see
You
it then, and you
not
don't know as
everybody
much
knows
as yeah.
everything. That's what's going on.
That's
Very.
it. I mean, we had all the controversy, and we had a lot of stuff that was weird. And obviously, today's new age, it's a little different, the way things are going. But that was everyone's life, and I lived that. So I don't know how I got onto that. I kind of just fall
You're
my
just
ways
telling us
around these
about who you
conversations.
are. It all
But
matters.
that was it. So then, after I'm, following Dave now, I'm starting to travel. I'm old enough to drive. St. Louis was boring. Living in Missouri was just
Yeah.
boring to me. I was a kid who was always
Yeah.
wanting adventure. I was a thrill seeker. I was the Need for Speed junkie. I grew up when Jackass was starting, and I grew up through the Jackass and the Beavis and Butthead, okay, era, and South Park.
Yeah.
If you
Yes.
went to school when I went to school and graduated in 2004 high school, if you went to school Thursday and you didn't know what happened on last night's episode of South Park, yeah, you just weren't cool. Like it was like that's
Yes.
I grew up in that kind of dangerous time. You know what I mean? It's like that's when like bands like Korn and Limp Bizkit were. You got to look at the
Hmm.
'99 Woodstock. Just that
Yeah.
anger,
That was a
whatever kind of.
disaster. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful disaster. But it was that.
Years
Yep.
later, when I moved down to Florida, I actually one of the guys I was a poker dealer, and a guy I used to deal poker with, he was actually at '99 Woodstock. He's from New
What did
York up
he
there,
say
and
about
he
it?
was there. He said it was what he can remember. You know what I mean? He
Yeah,
was
I mean, it was a long
who
time
knows
ago.
what. There was
Yeah,
no
and
drunk
things. Yeah, yeah.
college or whatever
Of
it was.
course, of
Sure, who
course. You're
knows?
Woodstock.
But every single thing. He's like exactly what you've seen or what you think. It's exactly what it was, and he remembers being up close on a couple. He says he always told me stories, and it was specific performance. He's like the corn performance when you're blah blah. The big old whatever that they're tearing down the pieces of wood. He goes, I'm right here, right there. He said, what like, and I know what that's
Wow.
like because like there's a Dave DVD, and I'm like, I'm on it. I'm
Oh
on the
yeah.
Dave
Oh
DVD,
hell yeah. Oh well, I am
and
not
it's
that
it's
cool.
like
That's awesome
close
though.
up. It is like close up of me singing like four lyrics
What?
and pointing my finger at
Tell
the
me which
the
one it is. I
Piedmont
gotta
Park.
see it. Oh shit, that's a
It's
great
it's
one.
uh it's Atlanta, the
Uh-huh.
Piedmont Park show,
No
and
way.
it's during Too Much, at the beginning of Too Much. And if you watch like the first few lyrics, straight in, suck up, and go. You watch
Oh.
from that on, and then the camera just kind of pans, and it's like me, and it's like, and I'm just saying like four words, and I'm like, baby face. It's '07, so I was 21 years old. Yeah,
You've given me a homework assignment
and
and
I
I appreciate
so
it.
funny story about that show. That was a show where I was on a mission that show. It was 2007, and I had never been front row for Dave. And it was like, I want a front row. Like, I remember my first show was in '03. So we're
Hmm.
4 years into Dave now. I've become a fan. I've seen him all around. 2006, I think, would have been my first travel show, which probably would have been Noblesville, Indiana, or Deer Creek.
Hmm.
Um, I think that was '06, my first time there. That would have been my first travel show, I think, would have been around '06.
Okay.
Maybe a show in '05 travel, but I don't think. I think '06 was my first travel show. And leave town, road trip, I'm going to see Dave. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
only 3 hours, 3.5 hours away. We're going.
of
And I
course.
remember that show, Noblesville, because this is like the first time I'd ever road tripped. And it was back in the days of MapQuest
Oh
when you used to
God.
have to type
Print
in on
out
the
the shit.
computer and print out your sheet of map. You
Yes.
remember that?
Very
So
clearly.
me and my buddy, 2006, or whatever, like we're like, I don't. Maybe it was, yeah, it had to be maybe it was 2005 our first show then. I don't know, but it was definitely MapQuest. We print out these directions. We have the direction. We're driving right, and we didn't realize that there was a time change from
Oh
St. Louis
yeah.
to Noblesville, Indiana. So like we pull into the parking lot, like we think we got time and everything right, and like I hear, and I think it was the Stone. I think it was like the first
Oh
few like just guitar chord, just
no.
the
Mhm.
Stone, and I'm looking at my friend and I'm like, dude, Dave's on, and he's like, oh, it's got to be house music, and I was like, they don't play Dave house music, so
Play
we're in the
Dave before
parking
Dave.
lot. Yeah, we're in the parking lot. And this is the technology wasn't there where the phones auto switched when you
Right.
drove into the hour. Like you had to
Right.
change that shit.
You
So
had to
like we
know
didn't
about it.
know that the time changed. Like we didn't know. We're fucking kids.
Right.
So like we get to Indiana and here it is, he's playing, and we just start just running through the parking lot, you know what I mean, as fast as we can. We get in there, we're finally in there. We take a deep breath, and now 1 second later, someone just passes us a joint, and we're just like, all right, sweet, thank you, we're
Hell
here.
yeah.
And
I needed that right now.
that was our first, travel show. That was our first Dave adventure, say
That's
you will.
hilarious.
And And we got a camping spot, and we had no camping equipment. Like, we had like nothing. And we had bought some like little, we bought a tent, and we had minimal stuff, right?
Yeah.
Minimal, nothing to cook with. All right, we'll get some food there. We'll eat at the concert. We won't have to eat overnight. We'll leave the next morning.
Right.
Whatever, we're good. So we're camping night one. I remember the first time I ever heard nitrous oxide tanks. I don't know if you've ever been to any of those shows or any of the festivals where you hear those whistling nitrous oxide
Yes.
tanks.
Yes.
But like, we had no idea what the hell that sound was. We had no idea
Mm-hmm.
what the hell was going on in the campground. We're sitting in our tent, just smoking weed, just me and him. We weren't very adventurous. We weren't very,
Yeah.
we weren't drinkers really. We weren't
Yeah.
partiers. It was just, we were a couple stoners who were there for Dave
Yeah.
Matthews, right? And we
Right.
step out of we were kind of like, we were like inside of the tent because we're worried about like it, getting in trouble for smoking weed, right? We have
Right.
no
Yeah.
idea that there's a guy over
Yeah.
here popping off nitrous balloons for sale, like 2 tents over. No clue. We're young. We're virgins to this.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
we're smoking our blunts in our tent, looking at each other like, you want to go for a walk? Like, you want to go for a walk? Like, I'm like, let's go for a walk.
Mhm.
We go for a walk, and a guy like just pops out of some trees, and he's like, you guys got balloons yet? And we're like,
What?
balloons? Like, we don't know. Like, no idea. Just right over the head. So the guy's like, dude, go see the guy on the other side of those trees right there, man. He's got the tanks in the trunk, man. Just get some balloons. We're like, okay, we got a balloon. So like, we each get a balloon. We go
Yay!
back to our we go back to our tent with said balloon, and we knew what it was, but we didn't
Oh,
quite know what it was gonna do or what
I
we
would have thought
were.
it was
So
helium. I really would have been like, you want to make funny noises? Wee, wee, wee.
so we didn't know, like, do we do the whole balloon and suck all the air? Do we sip it? Do we, you know what I mean? So we start like, do you feel anything? Do you feel it? You know what I mean, kind of thing. Before you know it, I guess we're in the tent all night and just giggle boxes, smoking our marijuanas, and we had our balloon. But all I know is we were so miserable by the next morning. Like, it wasn't the balloon, I don't think. I think it was just the fact that we were so unprepared. Like, we didn't
Yeah.
have,
You
we
slept on
didn't
the
bring any,
ground.
you know what I mean? It was like pretty bare nothing. Like, we thought, oh,
Yeah.
just chill in a tent for a night. How bad could it be? Or like,
It could be terrible.
it was it was terrible. So it was so terrible that I remember driving, leaving. So like the next morning came around. Obviously, you have all day now. We're like, what do you want to do all day? You know what I mean? We were just kind of like
Sleep.
looking around at all these people who were puffing these balloons with these tents and all this friggin'. They got beaded, frickin', then all the we were kind of just out of our element. Let me tell
Yeah.
you. Okay, we weren't quite all prepared for Deer Creek at that time of whatever it was,
Yeah.
and it was one of those kind of just like culture shocks at that time, at that moment. You know what I mean? For
You
teenage
learned
boys of
something that
from
day.
Missouri, I was kind of like, what the hell is this? You know what I
Indiana,
mean?
what you got up
Super
here?
intrigued. Yeah, and that's what we didn't know. Was this an Indiana thing? Was
Yeah.
it a Dave thing? Was this a travel day thing? Like, what's the deal going on here, right? Because
Some
like we
clown
didn't
handing
see
out
that in St.
balloons.
Louis in the parking lot. Yeah, in the parking lots in St.
Right.
Louis at Dave, we didn't see that.
Yeah, the
And
clowns were
and it
not
was like,
there.
okay, so we got and I remember hitting the highway. Yeah, we were hitting the highway, and during the day we found a hotel, and we found like a cheap, $50, $100
Mm-hmm.
hotel, whatever it was, and we booked
Mm-hmm.
a hotel. We took a little nap. We chilled there during the day, and then we drove the 30 minutes to the show for the night two,
Yeah, yeah.
and we saw the night two show in our element, more comfortable,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that was that. But
Rested.
I was young, inexperienced. I didn't know. Fast forward years later, 2000. I wrote down a couple dates so I wouldn't forget, like specific
Yeah.
dates, so I remember certain shows.
Well, it's a long time ago.
And that was 2000. Well, that was 2000, 2005, 2006. That or Deer Creek experience in
Uh-huh.
Noblesville, Indiana, and then you fast forward to 2010. Okay. Now in my
Okay.
life, I've got, a job and a girlfriend and this and that, and, typical Missouri issues for a young 20s boy, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and I decide I'm going to go to a concert with my dad in Chicago to go see Dave. And Dave was playing Wrigley Field. And me and my dad are both huge sport nuts, and
Mm-hmm.
neither one of us had ever been to Wrigley Field. And growing up in St. Louis, we had been to Chicago 100 times. We had never gone to Wrigley Field for a game or not. Like, it just we never did it. And I don't know why. He didn't know why. It was just kind of one of those things we were both like, why have we never been to
Yeah.
Wrigley Field?
Right.
And at that point in my life, 2007 changed. 2007 on. If Dave was within 5 hours or so, I was there.
Yeah.
I didn't care. It didn't matter what it was. It didn't matter if I had to, this, that, sell a whatever
Hitchhike.
kidney.
We're getting there. Yeah.
It didn't matter. So that's what I did. It was Kansas City. It was Chicago. It was Indy. It was, it was everywhere I could go within a 5-hour drive-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes a little further. Like 07, I did go to Vegas. 07, I did go to Atlanta. That was further than the 5-hour drive.
Awesome. That was
But
far.
there were,
Yeah.
I guess I should start with a couple of that. So, I mean, my favorite song is C Cup, if anyone's interested. It's I don't know why. I think it's musically, it's very jazzy. Um, it's very interesting lyric, in my opinion. Some of the things that he talks about, about greed and everything, and it's a
Yeah.
very,
It's an
it's a good
intense song.
story.
Yeah, it is a story. I
It,
almost wanted to say it's like a ballad, like it is like this, because the story starts with the very first chord of that song. Like he takes you on this journey of a story, and that's why it's
yes.
17 minutes. He has so much to say in that song.
And what's funny is, so my first show was 2003, right? And we're in 2007, and I've been to almost 20 shows now. And
That's a lot.
I had yet to hear C Cup live.
Wow. That's surprising.
And it was one of those things where it was like pissing me off
Yes, I've been there.
because it wasn't like I feel like he plays it more now than he really was in that little time
Gotcha.
period. He didn't really, it wasn't, I don't think, played a ton, but it
Yeah.
was like you could almost pick like when he was going to play it. And it's like I got to that point where, predicting set list type of stuff. I know we've all been there. If
It's
you're listening
fun.
to a podcast like this, you've probably been there. Um,
It's
so
it's true.
when he announced his Vegas shows in '07, it was 2 shows in March of '07. Now, mind you, I was born in 1986, so 2007 was my 21st,
Hell yeah, it was.
and
Perfect time to go to Vegas.
my birthday is the last week of February, and he was in there the last weekend of March, so it was exactly like 30 days
Mm.
after my birthday. So I said a coincidence, huh? That Dave should announce a couple shows in Vegas in March out of
It's
nowhere. It's
clearly
not
for
part of a
you.
tour. It's just 2 random shows in Vegas or 3 random, whatever it was. I was like, right after my 21st birthday, I was like, I guess I have to go to this damn show or
Dave
shows.
invited
I
me.
forgot
It's
now.
my birthday.
So that was live released. That was live released. I think it was only 2 nights, but it might have been 3 at the MGM Grand Garden Arena, whatever. And that was March of '07. And I went there because I even said, knowing the time of year that it was, I said indoor show. And at that time, Dave indoor shows C Cup. It was just always happening, always in the indoor shows. It was just like C Cup, the
Yeah.
fall shows, the winter, whatever, C Cup was there. And it was just the summer shows, it wasn't showing up as much. And if it was on big 2-night stands or whatever. And it wasn't, I never got it. And like every freaking show was pissing me off that my favorite song I can't hear. And yet I knew it wasn't a rare song. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't be mad if it was like, oh, my favorite song's Cigarette Lit. You know what I mean? Why am
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
getting this song? You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Well,
Right. Right.
good luck, bud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I should have had a C Cup 20 something shows into my Dave career, and I
You
hadn't.
should have.
So I said to my friend, I'm like, he's gonna play it in Vegas. I said it's 30 days after for my birthday, indoor show, Vegas. My 20. I was like, you better go with me. And my buddy's like, but I'm not gonna be 21 yet. And I'm
Oh
like,
shit. You don't have to be
I
21 to
was
get
like,
into the show though.
well, no, but he's all like, I don't want to go to Vegas. And I'm like, dude, fucking don't worry. I said, I'm not gonna want to go out to the bar. I said, I'm going there for Dave. I'm going there. You can still get in the casinos. You can
Yeah.
probably play and whatever. So back in those days, they didn't ID and stuff,
Right.
and you could sit down and play. But if you hit a jackpot, well, now you might not get the jackpot, you know
Yep,
what I mean?
yep.
But, and he looked older than I did. I was the runt of the litter for my grade. So, I mean, I looked like a child. So everywhere that we went, I would walk in first and
Mm-hmm.
I'd show them my ID, and they would see my ID. And they were like, well, this freaking 12-year-old's 21, you know what I mean? His buddy's got to be, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they would, they, he had a fake ID that looked nothing like him. It was so bad. It was someone's real ID. Or back in those days, you would just get someone's ID,
Yeah.
and they didn't even look at it. They didn't
Oh
even
my
look
God.
at it. They would just like take mine. They let me in. They just like, okay, go ahead. And like, so we went to Vegas. Once again, broke, not the way you would totally want to go to Vegas. I remember
Right.
we stayed at Circus. We stayed at Circus
Ooh,
Circus because it was
yep.
the cheapest place on the strip to
Yeah, it
stay.
is.
We wanted to be on the strip so we could walk. We were like, oh, we'll be able to walk if it's on the strip. Little did we know that walking from one end of the strip to the other end of the strip is like a whole day.
It takes 48
But
hours. Yeah.
we didn't care. We did it anyway, and we went
Mm-hmm.
there. No car, flew out there. Took the shuttle to the freaking hotel, and we were
Yeah.
there for Dave. And we drank, and we smoked, and we this, and we that, and we Vegas at 21.
The
Once again,
lights
I
were
was never
pretty.
that. I was never the wealthy. I was always that working, paycheck to paycheck kid, and
Yeah.
I.
Yeah.
I had, like I said, addiction issues. The money went to the addictions a lot of times. I'd say the heroin part started later, and what's funny how I can measure my addiction and measure the time is based off of Dave.
Yeah.
I booked a trip to the Chicago, like I said, with Wrigley Field in mind, me and my dad, and I had been dabbling with some heroin with a ex-girlfriend of mine, and we had not looked at it as a problem or that it
Yeah.
was, what I mean, anything crazy. We had never, experienced any withdrawal symptoms or gone
Right.
through any problems. And I had a decent job, and at that time, small bills, still living with, family type of stuff, or, I had my own places here and there, but it was minimal cost at that time.
Right.
So there was always the money for the drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean? So we did drugs recreationally like that. Well, the heroin got a little regular.
Mm-hmm.
We enjoyed the way it felt. We enjoy, we both had some situations that we were going through or whatever. And, especially, once again, she had a story, a life, and,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and I'm a lover. And when I love hard. So, what I found out that whenever we'd get into little arguments or whatever, she'd go run over to one of her friends' places and she'd sniff a little heroin.
Mm.
So what I said to her is, I knew the people who did it, and I worked with them, and I went to, and there was people who recreationally did heroin back then. And that was before the days of fentanyl. Fentanyl
Right.
didn't exist in these days. Like, I mean, as bad as all drugs are bad. I'm not going to say they're not, but the heroin was heroin, you know what I mean? And
Right.
people that I worked with, people that
Right.
you know what I mean, I'm like, this guy's a good job, this guy this guy that, you know what I mean? So he does a little heroin on a
Right.
Friday night, sniffs a little line. And it was like,
Right.
I didn't feel like it was a, risk. I'm like,
Right.
it was, you know what I mean? And I had tried a cocaine before, you know what I mean? And then my friends all did cocaine. I was never that first guy to, it was always my friend. I saw people do it and people
Yeah.
that I knew and respected. And this guy's got a college education, a great job. So he does a little, I looked at it no different than a guy cracking open a beer on a Friday night. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it
Yeah.
was just kind of one of those things. So the heroin kind of just same thing with me. It was just one of those, like, we kind of knew, like, don't make it regular. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It was like, oh, you're going to do a little line. You want to sniff a little line on a Friday night. Like, that was all right. And I kind of just, accepted that by seeing how people were still functioning members of society, even though they happened to on a Friday night.
Man, you never know who's
So,
doing cocaine. You can't tell. You
oh,
cannot
no.
tell.
There are
Mm-mm.
functional doctors, lawyers,
Mm-hmm.
judges. There's a
Mm-hmm.
functioning addict, and then there's a non-functioning addict. But
Of course there
there's
is.
there's
Yeah.
scales
On
to
every level.
everything.
Yes, there is.
And hey, there's some people that can have a drink and be cool and at dinner and have one drink, and there's other people who can't have liquor touch them without wanting
Right.
to just drown
Right.
themselves in it.
Right. Right.
And
Everybody's
and
different.
that's it's the beautiful thing of life. And it's
Mm-hmm.
something that we'll never be able to explain. And doctors, scientists, all these psychologists can claim that they have the answers and this and that. I wasn't beaten as a child. I wasn't, molested as a child. I wasn't this. I wasn't that. I wasn't that. I wasn't this. I wasn't that. I became a heroin addict.
Mm-hmm.
It happens. I tried something and I liked something.
Yeah. Yeah.
It numbed the bad feelings. It numbed the depression. It numbed those feelings of getting bullied as a kid. It numbed the, little things,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
life. It numbed life.
Life.
It was
That's
numbing.
right. Yeah.
But it wasn't a problem until it became a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't know it was a problem until I book a trip to Wrigley with my dad, and I leave St. Louis for a weekend to go on a vacation with my father and father-son trip like the old days. And I didn't take heroin with me because why? You know what I mean? It was
Right.
something
Right.
me and my
Right.
girl. It was something special between me and my girlfriend.
Right.
And it's
Right.
not like we didn't go hang out at houses with 100 people and do heroin. You
Right.
know what I
It
mean?
was
That's not
something
how
you
we
did
did it.
just with her. Right.
It
Yeah.
was a ritualistic thing. It was, yeah, it was what it was, but we were bonded and bonded before it. We were bonded deeper by it, and it is what it is. But in 2010, that was Wrigley Field, and I felt dope sickness for the first time in my life.
When did
And
you realize what it was?
I didn't know what hit me.
You didn't know.
So it was literally the drive up there. I started just feeling like a little whatever, and I was thinking, oh, it's because being stuck in a car for 5 hours, six
Sure.
hours
Yeah.
there, sitting there or
Yeah.
whatever. And we get up there, and then I just started just getting just this feeling of just nerves, like just my arm, like almost like that sensation of bugs crawling on your skin,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
of just uneasy nervousness, twitch. Just I was just wanting to bounce my knees constantly. I was just not, I was like, why am I feeling this way? And then I'm like starting to get feverish, and I started getting fevers and cold sweats and stuff like that. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse, things that I was feeling.
Yeah.
And at first I thought flu or something, regular normal
Sure.
sickness, obviously. And
Right.
then I remember one of my friends calling from St. Louis, and he had actually called about heroin, and it was kind of like, hey, do you know if blah blah blah's around or something like that?
Right.
You know what I mean? Looking to get or something like
Yeah.
that. And I had asked him, I was like, yo, dude, I'm feeling that, I'm feeling that, I'm feeling, I started telling him some things there. I was like, do you think I'm, and he goes, bro, you're dope sick. And I was like, I'm dope sick. I'm like, so what do I do? How do I fix it? And he's like,
Right.
by getting some dope. And I'm like, I'm in fucking Chicago. What? He's like, shouldn't be that hard for you to find in Chicago. And I was like, fuck, are you serious? And he's all like, I'm just saying, bro. He said, nothing's going to fix it. He's like, you can go, take whatever you need. I'm saying, I'll go to Walgreens. I can buy whatever the fuck I
Right.
want. What can
Right.
I
I'll
take to
take
fix it?
DayQuil.
Whatever. He's like,
Yeah.
he's like, he's like, no, you need to go get some dope. And I'm just like, fuck. So I got on my phone back in those days, the internet and everything, and I'm doing searches. And once again, the internet was a wilder place back then. And there were
Mm-hmm.
message boards online where you could literally find drugs and
Mm-hmm.
find out where neighborhoods, certain places, go behind this, whatever. And I had seen, description. I had known Chicago and bad parts of Chicago, and I was just kind of like weighing my options of like, okay, it's saying some of these areas I could go on adventures during this day, you know what I mean, go try to find me some dope. How do I explain that to my dad? How do I, break away from my dad for a couple hours to go on an adventure in Chicago alone?
Right.
Um, how do you do these things? You know what I mean? So I chose to tough it out. And I said, I got this. So 2.5 days in Chicago of toughing it out, 2 Dave shows that I couldn't tell you one fucking thing that happened at those 2 shows because I was so goddamn miserable and couldn't even stand up for it.
Oh God.
It was, my dad just thought I was sick.
Yeah. Wow.
So that was the first time. And it's funny that, once again, the way life happens, and Dave Matthews comes into these little spots in my life. And it's like first time ever feeling dope sick and knowing I'm addicted to heroin.
Uh-huh.
That's a wake up call. At that moment, once you feel that dope sickness like that and how severe it is, it can't be described. I mean, I describe as best I can, as short as I just did, but
Right.
I could go on for days about symptoms and things. What if it's nothing's like it? Nothing's like it. And you just, I don't know if you ever played video games as a kid. You remember Sonic the Hedgehog?
Sure. Heck, yes, absolutely.
So the Sonic the Hedgehog games, there were some games where he used to accidentally fall into water. I don't know if you remember that. And if he was in water, they had there was like little plants that would give off air bubbles. And you would have to swim over to the plant and get an air bubble before Sonic died. And if you didn't get the air bubble, like the last like five, like it was giving you a countdown, it would play this music. And this
Uh-huh.
music was like dun 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 dun, dun, dun and it would get faster and faster and faster and faster until he died.
Yeah.
And like the one thing I explain to people who have no idea about drug addiction or have never felt that, like the longer you're going without that dope, like it's more the severity of those symptoms come. And I don't want to get too graphic on here about symptoms, but they can get pretty nasty. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Um, the one thing I explain it to non-drug users or people who've never whatever is like that whole thing, like that anxiety, that heart
Mm-hmm.
racing of knowing like if I don't get that air bubble, you know what I mean? I'm
Mm-hmm.
dying. Like if
Mm-hmm.
I don't get that dope, if I don't go get like, because you may not die from withdrawals of heroin,
Right. But
but
you
you
might.
will think you are. But you will think you are.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what I always tell people. Like, because there are a couple addictions out there, at least for I'm not a scientist, don't quote me here, guys, a doctor, not advice. But, from what I've read in my whole time throughout my experiences of stuff, there's certain addictions out there that can kill you. The withdrawals can kill you from alcohol. They say the withdrawals from alcohol, severe, whatever, can actually kill you. They say you can't actually die from the withdrawals of heroin,
Huh. I don't
but
know.
you will
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
but you will think you're dying. Oh, you're a nerd.
Wow. Well, I know. I haven't. I mean, medicine is a very
Yeah, yeah.
broad
I don't
subject.
know if you've ever dealt with an ER patient or anything that's come in and you know what I mean, is withdrawing from drugs, but
Oh yeah. And I worked in a
it's
psych unit,
terrible.
which you wouldn't think that when I say the word psych, that you would find patients there that are withdrawing, but they are absolutely there. And so I have seen it, and
Yeah.
it's terrible to watch. So I can't imagine
Well,
how terrible it must be to feel it.
I live a life where I feel like all this stuff needs to be talked about more. Because, like I
It
said, we
does.
have cousins, we have brothers, we have nephews. Some of us who are listening to this may be facing the addiction themselves.
Yes,
What one person uses to get off of it isn't going to work for another person. What one person feels may not be what someone else feels. We are all different. Everything in our body is different. I
that's
learned
right.
later in my life about something different in my body, and I think that has a lot to do with my addiction situation. But it's it shouldn't be stigmatized and it shouldn't be silenced. It should be
No.
talked about more
Yes.
because if someone hears this and they're like, "Oh my God, I didn't know I was dope sick. That was dope sickness." You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's like
Right.
all it takes is just a little education, and we can educate ourselves a lot more than books can educate us.
That's right.
So that's my
Absolutely.
opinion.
No.
um
Yeah.
that was the first dope sickness, was 2010. So now I'm a full-blown heroin addict. It's 2010. My life continues, and the first time I ever did heroin at a show was 2011, a year later. And it's now such a part of the life that I can't function without it. And in 2011, Dave announced that he wasn't touring, and we were kind of like, "What do you mean not touring?" We lost our thing, and it was
Hmm.
that thing. And here is now I'm an addict, so I've gotten into other parts of Dave and Dave's
Yeah.
songs and some of his, and now songs like Rhyme and Reason hit me differently. And I'm angry with my addiction. And at the end of that song, when he goes off in his, you know, and I don't even know what you want to call it, and he's like, "I'm gonna rage," and he goes off into his, that was relatable,
Hmm.
terribly relatable. And when he played that live during my addiction times, it was like I would scream those lyrics. I hated life. And once you're an addict, you hate life. You expect to kill yourself. Like I pretty much, I guess you could say, accepted the fact that I was going to die a heroin addict.
Hmm. Wow.
And I was okay with that for whatever reason. And then after being on it for so long, it got to a point where that being okay with dying turned into, why is this not killing me?
Hmm.
My friend just died last month. My buddy's sister just died last. Why am I not dying?
Mm-hmm.
And I hated myself for not dying. It was weird, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
unexplainable, and maybe someone else feels similar things sometimes. But
Mm-hmm.
it was, after accepting the addiction and accepting whatever I was, and okay, I'm worthless. I'm this. I'm that. Let me die. And
Mm-hmm.
yet, it didn't kill me yet. You know what I mean? Now, mind you, I was, and this is maybe too much detail, maybe not, but I was just snorting it at those times.
Mm-hmm.
And then as time progressed on, we, progressed.
Yeah.
And when it progressed, rhyme and reason comes into play again. And it's now an anthem of my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Please take this needle from my vein, my friend. Like, please. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But no one
Mm-hmm.
could because I didn't, I couldn't deal with going through those withdrawals. I had done them, so it's too miserable and whatever. I didn't
Right. Right.
I didn't come from that family that could send me to the $30,000 a month rehab in Malibu, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And there's people who do, and God bless them. I don't
No.
shame
Yeah.
any of you.
Right.
Go do it,
Yeah.
enjoy it. If
Yes.
my family had the 30,000 to send me away to a month, I might have gotten clean sooner. I might have, probably not, because I didn't want to get clean. You know what I mean? I'm not like
Yeah.
blaming that I didn't have it, but you know what I mean. Would it have helped? Maybe, maybe not. You know what I mean? I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, but you have to try things. You know what I mean? I tried many things. I tried lots of things, but it was very tough. It was many years. But it was just Dave still stayed. It was the only thing that I cared about, really. It was like,
Yeah.
as long as Dave have concert, I'm a heroin addict, doesn't matter, you know what I mean? But all money went to heroin. All money went to the drug. There wasn't the money. So like when Dave says no show in 2000 or no tour in 2011, part of me was kind of like relieved, like, all right, I don't have to figure out how to get money for heroin and Dave. You know what I mean? It was like, all right,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And then he announces this damn caravan. And it's like, we're going to do these cities, this Dave Matthews caravan. And I'm like, I want to do all the cities. I'm like, oh, fuck, but I can't. I'm a heroin addict and I have no money. Like, what are we like, gonna. So, I had played around with money and this and that. I'm working still. I'm a functional heroin addict this time. So I have a full time job. My job doesn't know
Mm-hmm.
I'm an addict.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a functioning member of society. A lot of people have no freaking clue I'm an addict and
Mm-hmm.
never would have believed it at that time.
Right.
Um, I was a manager of a quick serve restaurant. I was a new car salesman as a heroin addict. Like, it was one of those things that that was part of my life, and that's what it
Right.
was.
There is
And
no certain
it's
look to addiction. There is
there
no
is none.
certain
And,
look.
and, and I'm here to tell you, like I said, people, and I'm sure many people watching, like, oh, they knew you were. Yeah, I'm sure they knew you.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Mm-mm.
no, no. People had no idea that in between selling a car, I was going into the bathroom stall and shooting myself up with a needle. And it's wild for me even to talk about this now, that's the same person. It's like, that's when I talk about this stuff, like, is this real life?
Mm-hmm.
Is this real or am I dreaming? Like, I don't know. But as far as I know, that all happened, and that's what I did, and that's my story, and that's why I stick to it. But it's those things that now I'm a full blown addict, but Dave still has that spot. I still have enough sense in me to know that I should be better. And I
Yeah.
and I have that when I go see Dave, and I still have that soft spot hit me. And even at those times when I was angry at life and angry at myself and angry at the heroin and maybe angry at my now ex girlfriend at the time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whatever I was angry at, it didn't matter once Dave came on, or Dave, whatever. It was that whole, I still got that peace. You know what I mean? And whether it was a happy song or a sad song, it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of weird how that side came out of me during those times. But if you were there to show and you saw me during my heroin addiction when I hated life and wanted to die so bad, but too big of a pussy to do it myself, thank God. It, it was one of those things that you wouldn't have believed that this guy was a struggling heroin addict who hates himself, and because Dave's playing, and I don't care. Listen, I'll say it to all you fans right now. One of my least favorite songs that Dave plays live is Stay. I hate it.
And
I
that's
do not
okay.
like the song. And the reason why is because usually when he plays it, it's at the end of the show, and it's just not the encore you want your show to end with. And in the Midwest, at some of these BS Midwest shows, which is what I like to say now that I've experienced, West Palm Beach like 10 times, it's like
They're
when you
all
go to a
very
little,
different.
but when you go to a one night stand in Kansas City or St. Louis, it's not going to be what you get at SPAC,
No,
at
it's
West
not.
Palm Beach,
It is not.
at
You're
Deer
right.
Creek. It's not. And whether, some people who are anti-day, oh, it's phoned in. It's not phoned in. It's not, what I mean? It's not the same. Not to say a bust out doesn't come to those cities every now and then, because it
Of
does. When it
course, it
does,
does
and
happen.
when it does, half the crowd sitting down because they don't, they're not even big enough Dave fans to even know the
Right.
song. And it's like, it can
Right.
be beautiful.
I
Yeah, I've
know.
had that. I've had to have with C Cup, and I don't know. People just get bored with it or whatever. I mean, there's been some times at C Cup where it's like I hear that do 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 do, and I'm
Mm.
like, ah, and I'm screaming at the top of my head, and I look around, and like the whole amphitheater is just crickets. You know what I mean?
Oh
And I'm
my
like,
God. You know what I'm doing at the very second that I hear that first and I know it's Seek Up? I start my fucking timer because I'm like, I want to
how long
see
of an
how
intro are
long
we
it's
getting?
gonna
Of
be.
an intro? I always look at the intro. I always say to them, like, whoever I'm with, I'm like, if this intro is more than 4 minutes, we're getting a good C Cup. I'm like, if it's under 4 minutes, average. You know what I mean? It's got to be over a 4 minute intro. Four
The
minute
last time I
plus
recorded
intro,
it,
you're good.
we were just short of 17 minutes total. Last time I recorded it live, I was like,
I've
I'm so,
I've been to a couple
so good.
22. I've been to a couple 22 minute
Oh,
performances.
wow.
It's
It's so
disgusting.
good.
It's
It's so
disgusting.
good.
But as a horn player and as a guy who just likes the music part of that whole jazzy, just
Mm,
whatever vibe, it's like it's so different from any other music that you'll hear from 90s on of like, I don't know,
yeah.
that's what drove me to that song. It's just that jazz music, and then Dave's voice comes in and you're like,
Yeah, I mean,
what?
I can hear
And
it now in my head, and I'm
yeah,
just like,
if
I've
you
got,
had never
mm,
heard Dave before, and someone just played that song to someone who's never heard Dave before. The biggest Dave pop songs they'd never heard of the guy, no idea who he
yeah,
is. If you played that and they heard just that intro, and then you hear this voice, you would sit there and you would just look at it like you want to look at it with a magnifying glass, a little
hmm
deeper. You know what I
hmm
mean?
hmm
And I think part of that mysticism of Dave is what drives a lot of us.
Oh yeah,
I don't know how else to put it, but that's the word I'm going to use.
that's a great word.
It's. Do you agree with me? I assume.
100%. Yes.
It's that mysticism, just that
Mhm.
Dave. Like people talk about Dave speak and Dave dance and Dave this and Dave. It's like its own
Right.
religion. It's its own movement. It's its own. Just
Yeah.
what is Dave? You know what I mean? And it's that mysticism and that
We're still all
song
trying
and
to
this.
figure it out. There is no figuring out
Yes.
Dave Matthews.
Yeah. And like the one thing I've kind of like put myself on, I'm like, I think it's just South Africans. Because I look at Elon Musk and I look at him, and the more he talks, and when you watch him really give a spear talk, or, I see a lot of similarities in their social awkwardness or whatever,
Uh-huh.
where, obviously two guys who probably stand polar opposites on political spectrums. Okay, two guys from the same area, somewhat. I'm not a South
I'm
African,
not even for sure.
geological guy or nothing,
Yeah.
but I know, Elon Musk is South African, Dave Matthews is South African or whatever, and
Uh-huh.
I'm sitting here like when you hear them both talk in the way they're kind of a little weird, as people say or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I lost my
You're good. It
charge.
still sounds fine.
We sound
You're
fine.
good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I find it weird. Like that mysticism of Elon Musk. I have the same thing that I have with Dave. It's like that weird, and it's like it's always made me want to go to South Africa. I don't know why,
Yeah,
but I'm
check
always
out these cool ass people.
guys. Where do these guys come from? Yeah, where do these guys?
Right.
I don't know. Like maybe it's something cooler to offer than here. Maybe it's just another experience. I live for experiences.
I think it's just different than us, right? And I
I
love
do
I
believe
I
that.
love people that are different than me.
Yeah, those two guys, I think anyone would say who know them or who don't know them. Elon Musk is a different individual.
He's a
And,
different kind
and
of guy.
Dave
Yep.
Matthews is 100% a different individual.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. There's no one like him.
It's, it's, and I think that's where I've gotten like my dad on board. My dad sees him and hears him, and then my dad gets that same curiosity. You can see him watch the interview or watch the whatever that I play for him or something. He's like, you know what I mean? It's that curiosity of like, is
Yeah,
this guy really like this? Which I've always said I fully believe he's exactly like that in real life, fully to the
I think so. I
is
do.
what we know of and see of as Dave and his tendencies, awkwardnesses, whatever stuff. I feel like, yeah, that's him. He's very, I think,
That's
authentic
him.
and
That's how he
whatever.
is at
Yeah.
home with his family. He's just
We all,
that
we all, we
guy.
all like to dream what we think Dave would be like, right? I mean, I've met countless women at 74 Dave Matthews shows who would divorce their husbands now if Dave approached them. You know what I mean?
Right.
And we
Yeah.
all strive to think like what that man is like. You know what I mean? And I think that says a lot about him and why he is as popular as he is to the people who listen to him. I think it's that mysticism, that
Yeah.
curiousness of like where, what,
He's the
how.
most intriguing man in the world.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. I mean, you want to make a TV man, the most interesting man? Oh, there he is right there. It's Dave Matthews. Yeah.
Yes, it is. At
Yeah.
least to us, right?
And what's so crazy is like, we just had an election happen. And although politics I don't want to go into at all, I don't care what side of the fence Dave Matthews is on. If he was running for president, which he can't because he's not U.S. born, but right? I guess he was born in South
I
Africa,
don't
right?
even know the rules.
He
I don't
is
know.
U.S. born. I
I
don't
don't know
think they
anything
know.
anymore.
But if that man ran for president, I don't care what his policies were at that point. I feel like I would have to vote for the man out of
I
my
would vote for him.
loyalty to him. It doesn't matter. And I think that's what makes me be a fan of him as long as I have, because no matter how many boards I go into, and if there's a policy in politics that he maybe have a heavy stance on, I don't have to agree with everything he is. You know what I mean? I
No.
don't have to
And
agree
there's
with.
no way you will agree with 100% of 100% of what someone is.
I don't agree with every
That's
song
not
he's
even
ever put out.
realistic.
Listen, I think he could take a couple of his songs and forget they ever got written. Stay, never play it live again, Dave, at one of my shows.
Oh,
Thank you.
no, don't say that. Makes you wanna
Makes me want
stay.
to go. Like, go to the parking lot and get in my
No.
car before the crowd hits, and I can actually get out early. Because, like, I know how that song is going to play, and I know how it's going to play, and I know nothing's going to follow it usually, unless out of nowhere he decides to just crack an ants marching, and I don't know, like,
Oh, true.
that
Yeah,
stuff
that could
happens.
happen.
You never know when that drum or, a drumstick, clink, clink,
Hmm.
clink, just could come at the end of another song. I mean, if there's time on the clock. But usually when you hear stay, and throughout my times in the Midwest, we had a lot of those shows that was shows, and they would close with stay a lot. And it's like I had like a dozen shows close with stay, and it caused me Dave.
Yeah,
It
I
caused
get
me.
that. I
Um,
do.
that's what it
I
was.
get that. For 12 shows to end the same
Um,
way, especially when we're going into this with the expectations
oh,
of
we're
it's
so
going to
serious
be completely
gospel.
different, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
And
tough.
that's why
So I
that's
want to
why
go. I have to ask you some questions just because
yeah,
I think
ramble
that
on.
if
Yeah,
as a
I fucking
listener you would want to know the rest of the story. So tell us, at what point in your addiction process did you finally say, I got to do something?
It's a good question, because it's not something I necessarily think about or know the answer of. Now that you ask me and I sit here and I want to give an answer, I'm probably going to say when my girlfriend left. So she went off to one of those addiction rehabs out of state.
Mhm.
Her family sent her off to that. And I was now alone and an addict.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I guess if there was anything worse than being an addict with her, it was being an addict alone.
Yeah, I bet.
So I started making, stupid decisions, hanging out with some people that I shouldn't have hung out with, this, that, I was never that person that ever, like, committed crimes to pay for my addiction. But
Yeah.
I may have stolen from my family. You know what I mean? I may
Hmm.
have,
Yeah.
done wrong to some people here and there for other reasons. But I felt like a piece of shit. I hated myself. I hated not being dead. I hated her being gone.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I begged my dad for help, and I went to my dad. And, obviously admitted to obviously everything and whatever, the depths of where it was. And he had known, but not known. And kind of, it was one of those things that where I don't even know what he knew or
Yeah.
didn't. But,
Right.
I basically said, like, I can't do this on my own, and I need help. And I don't know how, and I don't have any resources or this. I don't know, but help me. And I
Yeah.
asked for help because I'm here to tell you I'm a pretty independent type person who can figure out quite a bit. And besides just saying, oh, have a strong mind and just stop using, you know what I mean? That's the only, that wasn't an option for me. I didn't know how
Well,
to quit.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
neither did my dad. My dad obviously had no
Right.
skills. So, we looked to other methods and the internet. One thing led to another, doctor, medicine, got on the medicine, it didn't work. They suggest the methadone clinic. We go to the methadone clinic, talk to the doctor, this, that, the other. Okay, we're going to do the methadone treatment. Okay. I got rid of my car, my bank account, everything, all in my father's hands. And at this point, I'm old. Let's see here. Probably like 26 to 28 years old at this time. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm basically going to him and being like, treat me like a child. You know what I mean? And I'm agreeing to it.
Hmm.
So I lived with him. He drove me everywhere. He drove me to the methadone clinic every morning at 6 a.m. to go drink this liquid cup. And it's $15 cash. You have to go there, pay $15 cash. They give you the little cup of liquid. You drink it. And that's going to curb your withdrawal symptoms. Well, they start you on like 30 milligrams. And like I would take it and I'd go home and like halfway through the day, I'm withdrawing. And I'm
Hmm.
frustrated. And I'm like, what the heck? Okay,
Hmm.
go back to the doctor at the methadone clinic the next day. They say, okay, you got to raise your dose. We got to raise your dose. We start you on this amount because we don't know, everyone's addiction's different. Everyone's body
Right. Right.
different. You don't know, what's going to curb whatever. We're looking to find that number, that size dose that can give you 24 hours of relief. So they start you at like 30 milligrams. I got up, and they stair step you like 5 or 10 milligrams at a time. I was up to like 130 milligrams a day or 140 milligrams a day at my highest.
And you started at 30?
It was like 30 or 35 they start.
Wow. Wow. So you had a long journey from the beginning to
So like
finding
the
what was going
first
to
like month
help.
using the methadone, like it was like I was fighting going up in my dose. I didn't want, you know what I mean? Because I knew it was addicting too. I knew it was still a drug. I'm like, I shouldn't have to do it. I shouldn't, But like every evening,
Yeah.
I was still going and getting dope. And it's like I would do the methadone in the morning, and then I would go do a little dope at night. And then I would, you
Hmm.
know what I mean, wake up the next morning and do my methadone, and then I would do some dope. Like, and then like it lasted for a little while, a few months, and you know what I mean, raising the dose, getting that relief point, and I finally got to a point where I didn't care, and I just kept going up, 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 and I got to like that
Hmm.
130, 140 mark, and it curbed withdrawals. There was no withdrawal anymore. I never had that sickness anymore. It was still $15 a day, no matter if you took 30 milligrams or you took 130 milligrams. They charge the same amount.
Wow. Huh.
I don't know if that's the same
I mean,
nowadays, but that's
I
how
don't
it
know.
was.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's how it was. So, you know what I mean? I took the methadone and, okay, now I'm getting 24 hours of relief. Cool, cool, cool. So a couple weeks go by on that, and I was going to my counselor like, all right, I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, we're good. And they're like, no, 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 that's not how this works. You know what I mean? Like, what do you mean? Well, like, well, now you're not doing heroin, which is great, But what if you stop taking this today? What's going to stop you from going and doing heroin? And, I trusted in the professionals and kind of, with
Sure.
advice and everything else. So they're like, what's so bad about this, taking this you got to come here every day and take it. Okay. Yeah, we get that. You got to pay 50. Okay. Yeah, we get that. But, is that better than being addicted? And I'm like, yeah, you know what I mean? I kept drinking the juice, kept drinking the juice, kept drinking the juice. And months go by. I'm on this stuff in 6 months, 12 months, every single day showing up to this clinic, paying $15 a day, drinking this liquid just to not shoot needles in my vein anymore. You know what I mean? It was like, it seemed like I just had
Right.
replaced one with the other.
You were
And
still a
I
prisoner because you couldn't even
100,
leave. You had to show up to
100.
the clinic every day.
Well, yeah, after you have a certain amount of clean drug tests that don't show heroin
Uh-huh.
in your urine, so they
Uh-huh.
constantly give you random drug tests. And when you produce without for X amount of time, they give you take home privileges. And you
Ah.
have to get a lockbox, and they give you a few bottles that are measured to your dose. And so, like,
Yeah.
if you're going out of town for a weekend, yeah, it's only for certain occasions
Okay.
amounts. At least that's the way it was. Once again, I have no idea. It's been
Gotcha.
10 years now since
Yeah,
I,
yeah, yeah.
but that's the way it was. So, but you're right. I mean, it's one of those things that it's just, it was still addiction. And
Mm.
I found myself getting frustrated again. And it was like a revolving door. It was like I'm feeling the same thing. Now I'm addicted to this stuff. Now I can't get off of this stuff. I went from weighing 125 pounds to weighing 170 pounds from taking that methadone.
Hmm.
There was nothing else I changed in my life, exercise, food.
Hmm.
It was that poison that I was putting in my mouth. I had never had a cavity in my life until that methadone. And when I got off methadone,
Wow.
almost 2 full years on methadone, I had like 13 cavities, multiple root canals done, crowns. Spent about $12,000 fixing my teeth from that.
Wow.
And I had done
Wow.
life, never had a cavity until the methadone. Yeah,
Wow. I did not know that.
many
I
people
did not
don't.
know that. Wow.
And still to this day, I mean, I've been off methadone now 9.5 years. There's a lot of what they call like surface cavity around like gum lines, and it's just weird spots or whatever. But still to this day, I feel like because of the damage that it did, like I'm more prone to, I have to really, you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
step back,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever.
That makes sense though. Now I'm like thinking about it like a liquid that you pour into your mouth,
It's
like coats the surface of everything in your mouth. And if you're doing that every day and you don't,
it's like
I
a
mean,
liquid,
I don't,
it's kind of like children's Tylenol. It's a flavored liquid. It's a
mm,
syrupy kind
mm-hmm.
of, you know what I mean? It's thick kind of. Yeah,
Wow.
it's poison.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell you, like, hey, listen, if you're going through heroin addiction and you need to use that methadone clinic to get off it, go do it. I'm not here to advise
Yeah,
you,
absolutely.
but it's poison, and it ruined, my teeth. It ruined my gut. It ruined, a few things. It's bad. And I don't think, I'd advocate and I would this and that, and no one should be on it as long as they keep people on it. I think it's you know, I think it's a shame, our medical system in America and whatever else, that, how many things people get away with or companies get away with. And, basically the way the methadone clinic treated it, all my counselors basically said, and they said it to me multiple times, if you have to take this every day for the rest of your life, is that so bad? At least you're not doing heroin, and that they always kept going back. It's like almost like they had a script, you know what I mean, to read.
Mm-hmm.
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 And
So how do you get off?
programmed in
How do you get off of it?
marijuana. That's what I
And
did.
how did you
Well,
get
I
to
had done
that?
a lot of research, and I had found actually a rehab in Colorado that was using high dosages of THC to get people off of opiates. And once again,
Huh.
coming from a guy who doesn't have the money to go to one of these $30,000 a month rehabs,
Right, right.
I said to myself, well, if they're giving people high dose, I can go get high doses of THC. So, once again, I knew the tapering thing, stair step your dose down. So try to get off that 140 milligrams. So I slowly tapered it down.
Right.
Every week I would lower 10 milligrams, 10 milligrams, 10 milligrams until I got to like, I don't know, probably like under 100 milligrams.
when I got under 100 mil, or under like 50, I don't know, went by fives, and I was going 5 milligrams a week. I do 50 milligrams for a week. And then the next week I go down to 45 milligrams. And then I got such a low number, whatever. I had moved to Florida, and I had joined the methadone clinic in Florida because the one in St. Louis is like, oh, we have a sister clinic in where you're moving, and, we can get you. Sure you can. Of course you can. They have them everywhere. Coincidentally.
They do.
And they, so they're like, oh, we'll get you down there. So I'm like, okay, I got out of St. Louis because I had already made my decision. I'm done with this drug. I'm now done with this other drug because I was already stair-stepping that dose and planning my jump off. I just didn't know how or when or why or what. So moved down to Florida.
Listen to the rest of the story on part 2, releasing later on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your podcast. But in the meantime, peace, love, and Dave Matthews Band.